Let me know, class, if you can see my screen so that I can begin with the presentation. Yes, no?
Yes, ma'am, you can see.
Yeah. So I'm Rimjim Kumari and I work as a cloud and infrastructure engineer at Larsen and Turbo. And today I'll be covering JavaScript topic with all of you. And let's just begin with the agenda part. So today I'll be briefing you all of you about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Like basically, what is the difference between all three, and then we'll move on with the introduction, followed by output variables, keywords, and then functions. So like everyone, like if you're going in any kind of interview, so people might ask you like what is the difference between HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, because all of them are used as a web technology. So what is HTML is like if you are visiting any kind of web page, so the structure is what we see as the HTML, and if you're adding any kind of designs, layouts, or any kind of images, so that is what is CSS is. And if you're adding any kind of functionality to your program, for example, if you have a web page and then you have added good pictures, there's a good structure and everything, but there's no functionality. So that kind of web page, like there's no use of that kind of web page. So to add functionality to your program and then to give a meaning to your web page, we use mainly JavaScript. So like what is JavaScript is all about is, so JavaScript is a list of programming statements, and then mainly in JavaScript, like we will be using a lot of variables, operators, and then functions to execute and then make our program a bit of meaningful. So like if we see in C, C++, or in Java, we have all this kind of concepts like variables, operators. We have mathematical operators to, like if we want to add two values, we have to declare some variables. So what is variables is like if we want to store or if we want to give value to any kind of variable, we use variables. And if we want to declare a value, class, let me know if I'm going a bit fast or slow, or if you want to decrease my pace or anything, you can just pitch in between and then let me know. So if we want to declare or give value to any variable or make your program a bit of meaningful, then we'll be using variables. For example, if you know C or if you know C++, we use variables like var, and then we use varchar. We use float to declare decimal value or to assign a decimal value to any kind of variable. And then we have float, we have integer, like if we want to use 6, if we want to assign any numerical value to a variable, we have to make it as a type integer or a type float or character or decimal, any such thing. So similarly in JavaScript, what we use is we have to use var, let, and const to declare any kind of variables in JavaScript. And to assign any kind of value to your variables, we have to use equal sign to give it a value. For example, if you can see, I have declared here a variable which is of type numeric, and I have assigned 6 to that variable. And if you want to do any kind of mathematical operations to your variables, you have to use these kind of operators, which is plus, minus, equal to, division. Like this kind of variables we have to use to make your program work. And then like if you know in C, C++, or you know any kind of programming language, be it C, C++, or maybe this is JavaScript. So if you want to print output to your console, so for example in C we use printf to get an output from the console, we use scanf, and then we have to declare some functions to make it a bit meaningful. So similarly in JavaScript, to display the output, we have to use all this kind of four statements which I have mentioned in the PPT. So for example, if you want to write in any type of HTML element, so we have to use inner HTML. And mine class, like JavaScript is case sensitive, so you have to follow case, like you have to follow, like if you're using small a, small b, or any kind of thing, you have to be very aware of all these things in JavaScript, because if you're not following case sensitivity, you might land up having errors. And if you want to write anything into an HTML output, you have to use document.write. And then if you want to, for example, whenever you are running any of your programs and you want output as a pop-up, or if you want your output as a window alert, so you have to use windows.alert. And then if you want to use any, and if you want to write or if you want to take any kind of your outputs from console, then you have to use console.log. So I'll be running all this programs for all of you to have better understanding. So let me just run my program. And class, I'll be using only Notepad here while I'm doing all the practicals because I want to get the hang of the program and not using Notepad plus plus because it is having all the features inbuilt. So whatever I saw, I showed you here, like inner.html document.write. So I'll be running all the programs so that you're a bit familiar. So let's just use first windows.alert thing, and then I'll be using document.write, and then I'll be using console or inner HTML to make. So let's just begin our first program for JavaScript. So doc.html, doc type HTML. So this is what I'm defining as my HTML structure. I'm building a structure for my program, and then I'll be entering with all those things HTML, and then I have to write in body. I'll not write all those headers thing because if you want to mention, you can always write. I'll give an header to my program h1, and then let's write first program for JavaScript. Always class, if you want to get a hang of the program, I'll always suggest you to use Notepad. And then once you are very familiar with the programming language, then you can use whatever you feel. And then paragraph beginning. If you have any doubts regarding this, you can always pitch in and then I'll explain you. And then if I'm beginning my script, I have to write script. And then I'll always make sure that I'm closing my script. And then in between, I have to write my content. Like I told you that I'll be using alert. Windows.alert it was, right? WINDOWS Windows.alert alert. And then let me just do addition 2 plus 2. Okay, and then I have ended my script already, and then I'll close my body and then my HTML. And then let's just run our Windows.alert program. And then make sure that you're saving it, and then let's just open. So it seems that my program did not run and I did not get any kind of output. So let's just see what was the error I made. Okay, so we have to close this also. And then again save. So in JavaScript, whenever you want to give any kind of input to your program, always make sure that you're ending your program with a semicolon because otherwise you'll end up in error. What I got, and I have to run it again, and I did not get the output. Let's just see with alert if I get, and also let's have spaces to make it intended. Then close this also. See, like I told you, right? Like if you want to use or if you want to give, like if I want to display my message whenever I'm running this code, so this is what I've used, like alert, and on opening of this page I'm getting the output as 4. So this is what my code was, and let's just make another program to use other type of statements also to be sure. Yeah, and if you just notice that here I was using windows.alert, and in my program I've used alert. So if you're using alert also or windows window.alert, that will also do. But let me just make changes and then see if window.alert is also working. So it was window.alert. So both the statements work in my case, but window.alert was not working. So let me just check and then rerun again. Yeah, so with windows.alert also it is showing me message as 4. So this was one kind of output statement which I've used, and now I'll just show you with document.write and inner HTML also. So let's just see with inner HTML. HTML and then HTML. This is how in any programming language, if you just go with the very basics and then you have to come up with all those functions, and then we'll just declare how we'll just see in the other programs how do we declare a function and then all those things. So here in, let me just make my header. I'm using inner HTML this time, so I'll write h1 as inner HTML, inner HTML example, and then I'll close my header, and then I have to declare a variable, and this I'll explain you how do we get this. So p id is equal to, so if we want to use HTML, then we have to use this document.get element by id. So let me just declare my program first and then I'll explain you. Let me just give it as demo 1, and then I will close my paragraph with /p, and then I have to begin with my script. You can always run with me. If you get any errors, I'll be able to resolve also in that case, instead of listening. Document dot get element by id. So why we are using this document.get element by id? So to access any HTML, for example, if I am using this program to do an arithmetic operation, for example, adding two variables or adding two numbers, so in that case I'll be using document.get element by id, where this id defines the HTML element, and this inner HTML will define my HTML content here. And then what I have declared above was demo 1. I guess there's some issue. And then whatever ID you have declared above, you have to write that here. And it was case sensitive, so I have to write demo 1 and then dot inner HTML, dot inner HTML. And then whatever value which I want to print, let's just do 2 minus 2 and see what we're getting, or 2 plus 2 again. And then make sure that we're ending it with a semicolon. And then I have ended my script. I have to end my content also. So I have to end it with /body and then /html. So let's just verify here. My document type is HTML, inner HTML example, and then document.get element by ID, where this document where ID is defined as my HTML element and inner HTML is my content. And I'm using this to print my output 2 plus 2. So I have to save this, and then I'll save it with inner underscore HTML dot HTML. And then let's just run my program. And this time as well, it did not run. So I have to see what is the mistake I have done here. So if you see PID is demo 1, I have given demo 1. And then I have given 2 plus 2. Let's just add here some spaces. And then document.get element by ID demo 1 dot inner HTML. And then let's just save it and see. And it did not run. So maybe there's some mistake I have done. So let's open with Notepad. and then HTML body. You can also class just verify my code. If there's any errors, we can just do it together instead of me doing it. Okay, so this ID was also case sensitive. See, so what I've told you was like JavaScript is very case sensitive. So the reason why I was not able to run my program was because ID was in uppercase. So if you also do such kind of mistakes, will not be so. See, if I'm writing ID in uppercase and then saving my program, and then if I run it, I'll not get my output. So we always have to make sure that our program runs in and it has a proper case. It is in case proper uppercase or lowercase. So you have to make sure that all these things is in like all specifically this get element by ID. It is in lowercase and this B is in uppercase and then D is in lowercase. So it will run. Otherwise, it will end up in error. So similarly, we can use in like I have used inner HTML, then you can use document.write and then console.log similarly. If you want me to run the program for document.write also, I can just do that. So let's open Notepad again and then write a program for document.write. So I'll begin with this of type HTML. HTML and then my body. And then I have to give an header also like I did previously. And this was document.write now. So I'll write document.write example. I'll end my header. And then here I'll just make sure that I'm using a button also. Button type is equal to button. And then on click, I have to write my document.write. So here, if you're using Notepad++, just with the press of tab, you'll get all these things. But yeah, we have to go the harder way. We'll not use the shorter way. And then let's just do 2 plus 2 again with document.write. And then I have ended my semicolons. And then I have to write click. I'll write something like click, click. And then I'll end my button. And then that's it. And then I have to end my body and then end my HTML tag also. And then save our program. Desktop, and then this was document right? So I'll just mention it as document underscore write example HTML. And then I'll save my code and then we have to run it. So on click of my button, I have to get my output. So here what I have defined my document type is HTML and then this is an example for this header I have given. And then on click of my button, I should get output as output for 2 plus 2. Let's say if I just use another arithmetical operator and then see 2 divided by 2 will be how much, and then see the output. So yeah, our code is running and then we are good to go. And then that's it class. I'll just move on to another things. And then in JavaScript, like similarly in C, C++, if you see, we use a lot of keywords there. For example, int, float, char, switch, try, catch, all these things are the keywords we use in other programming languages. So similarly in JavaScript, we have a lot of keywords. For example, we have where. So where in JavaScript is mainly used to declare a variable. And also where, let, const, all these three are almost same. For example, if you want to declare any kind of variables, we can write where a, where b, or let a, let b, or const a, const b. And then the next keyword which I'll be using is if. For example, if there's any conditioning which you're using in your program, then we can use if. For example, if my salary is 5,000, then I have to enter in the loop, otherwise I have to exit. So in that kind of cases, if there is more than one or two conditions, then we can always use if. And the other keyword is switch. So for example, if there's a lot of statements to be executed, make a block of statements in different cases, then we can use switch. For example, in C, if you remember, we were using case A, case B, case 1, case 2, and then at the end we were using switch. For example, like switch for. And for is also used if like we have more than 100 cases to compare. For example, in a class there are 100 students, or 100 students to be compared, so we can always enter in a for loop and then make our program more readable or more, yeah. And the next thing is functions. So in CPP also we were having functions. So what function is class? So function is mainly a block of code. And a function, the main advantage of function is you can just declare a function anywhere in your program. Like you're done with your body, or anywhere if you want to just execute. For example, if in my function I have given, in my function if I've executed 2 plus 2, and then if you want to call that function like 2 to 3 times, at that time function is very usable. And then we use return to return anything. For example, return 0 if my function is true, return 1. And the last thing is try. There are many more keywords also, but due to time constraint I'm just switching to the main ones. For example, we have try, we have catch, try catch, and then these are mainly try catch, all these things are mainly used for exception handling. For example, if we have any exceptions in my program, my code will always begin with my try statements. So yeah. And then next is, yeah, as I've already told you what function is. So function is a group of statements executed together inside the curly braces is what my function is. And whenever you want to declare a function, make sure that you're using a function keyword followed by the name of your function and the round brackets. And then you have to start and like round brackets for your function name. And then when you enter inside a function, you have to make sure that you're using document.get element by id, where this get element by id is always case sensitive, so you make sure that you're following all this kind of structures. So in I'll just use like give you an example for function also. Yeah, and this was the basic JavaScript example which I've used. And then let's just run our code for function, or let's just run our code for how to declare a variables in JavaScript. So like in my